Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Fresh Perspective. With me today, Andri Stander. How's it?
Hello, Francois.
Welcome
It's
to
one of
Fresh
those.
Perspective.
Thank you very much. One of those situations where you don't know if I can greet you on your nickname or if I must use your formal business therapist coach presentation name. Hello, Francois.
Well, for those who don't know, my nickname is Homie because I'm a homeboy. As you can see, the way I'm dressed reflects that.
No, it's not true. It's called Homie because he's a safe space.
Well, I'll take it. Thanks. But
Exactly.
anyway, welcome. So I know from previous conversations that you are in a transition stage, but maybe do you want to share with us kind of what you've been doing up to now, what you're planning on doing, or where do you want to start and jump in?
Transition is a small understatement. If transition means without formal employment since January, then yes, transition. And obviously this lockdown made it a little bit more interesting. So, I mean, if anyone's listening to this later on, we're in the middle of our corona pandemic, or the South African version of ours. But the big benefit of it is that I've had so much time to really just think and focus and plan on what it is that I really want to do. So I worked with Western Province Rugby for nearly 8 years and was with the Western Province Rugby Institute. So essentially managing a professional rugby academy for youngsters leaving school. And at the end of last year, we sort of started talking about maybe taking a change of direction. And end of January this year, I had the opportunity to leave on relatively good terms. I just felt it was time. So the last couple of months, what's it now? It's we end of July, so last 6 months or so. There was a small stint where I was working with the Stormers senior team on player welfare and sort of performance support management or performance management and support. But obviously the whole pandemic ended that when the rugby finished. So it's given me quite a lot of time to think and plan what the next step is going to be. And I've always, I say always, but over the last couple of years, fell in love with the idea of like high performance and what high performance is, and specifically sort of performance coaching, how you like plan and design for achievement. And like in sport, athletes don't always realize that they've been applying sort of set rules and a set framework of behavioral psychology for achievement that can actually be copied for everyday life. And I spent the last 3 years or so just listening and reading quite a lot of behavioral psychology books. And so much of the science and the studies that came out, I saw in my 7-8 year period working with young professional players where, I mean, we work in an environment where we try and plan for achievement. I mean, you've got your coaching side, you've got your sports science, conditioning, medical, and everything works together around like individual athletes to get to a point.
Andri, can you maybe just, for people who don't know anything about how an institute works or academy works in terms of sport or rugby, can you just give us an idea, what does it mean, the Western Province Rugby Institute, when it was still functioning? What was that?
So I was referring to coaching and the sports science side, conditioning and medical. So the Western Province Rugby Institute was essentially the professional academy for our young players leaving school. And it functioned like most other professional academies, where the aim is, essentially to transition young professionals or young players leaving school to the level of high performance, or it's almost sort of a performance phase where you're taking the school kid or the schoolboy and you getting him used to the rigors of top level professional sport. And we try to do it within a year. In fact, we tried to do it in the first 5 months and then we go into competition phase. So when that player arrives, we do a full assessment of where he is in terms of his skill level, his conditioning level, whether he's had a recurring injury throughout school that was never properly nursed. Those things all come out when you hit the ground running at the start of your academy year. So in a nutshell, sorry to use the cliche, it's an environment in which we transition a young player from, I played schoolboy rugby, I'm talented, I was perfect every Saturday, to, okay, but this is now becoming your career. So you're going to do this for every single day of your life for the next 10 to 15 years. So it's getting him used to that. It's almost like an articles period for someone who did accounting who needs to become a CA.
Oh, I like that analogy. Okay. And what was interesting for me to notice when I was working with you there, the times I spent with you there, is the impact that increase in workload, physically, obviously the training is a lot different, but also mentally had. So what are some of the things you noticed there? How do you see the split in the players, the young players that's actually ready to go onto that next level, and those that are not?
Okay, so this is probably one of my biggest philosophies, and one of the things I'll write about a lot and say a lot in discussions is that it doesn't matter how talented you are. If talent doesn't work hard, then it's not going to get to the next level. So my one colleague, Greg, I think it was one of the famous basketball players, used to say it, is that hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard. So it was so evident. It was probably the most evident thing I saw from year to year is you'll have these incredibly talented players, like really freakishly talented, who can do anything when you give them a rugby ball. But if they don't make every single session, and they don't arrive early, and they don't put in everything they need to, and in fact, those are always those are the easier things to do, was to get to a session, especially the field sessions. But if you don't comply with your medical check-ins, with injury report, if you've got a slight niggle, if you don't arrive for strapping, if you don't rest properly, like all the lifestyle things, which you can all put in the box of work ethic, then you won't make it to the next level. You can make it to the next season, and probably even the season after that, like from a under 19 to under 20 or under 21 level, you can ride your talent, because then your pool of competition is still relatively small. But the moment you leave sort of that under 21 level to the next level, then you become a full-on senior professional. And then as a 22-year-old, you are competing with the 28, 29, 30-year-old player as well. And if you're in 19-year-old or 20-year-old, you're only competing with 3 age brackets. You essentially competing with guys your own age. But as soon as that pool gets bigger, the guy who's experienced and willing to work harder than you is gonna work you out. And there's so many stories of very talented individuals who arrived and didn't put in that work ethic, who got overhauled by the less talented guy, but who was willing to work his ass off, and they would essentially leapfrog him later on in the stream. And it never happens in the first year, funny enough. The talented guys are still the guys who play in their first year. It normally happens when sort of that compound interest effect starts showing returns 2, 3, 4 years down the line. And the best story, and I love this story, is the story of Nick Groom. I mean, he was in the Province Institute. He was a Rondebosch Boys Eye pupil. I can't remember if he actually played provincial rugby at school, but he arrived at the Institute as a bursary player, I think half bursary, and he was the 4th in line. I think there were 2 South African schools scrum halves ahead of him. He was 4th in line, and he didn't play a single game of Western Province under 19 rugby that year. And at club rugby that season, he even played on the flank sometimes, just to fill spots. But he just continued working hard. It's just because he was always busy, and he was such a great team man, and he was willing, to slot in where needed. And I did a chat with Ruan Nel a couple of weeks ago, and he said something which was amazing, is that whichever jersey you are playing in, even if it's your club side's jersey, that's your Springbok jersey. You've got to treat it as if it's your Springbok jersey. Mm. And Nick Groom was one of those players. Whichever team he played for on the Saturday, that was his Springbok team. And he would act and perform as if he was playing for the Springboks. So he left the institute year. The next season, he played for UCT under 20s a little bit, and even UCT first side. And sort of semi got pulled into the province structures again as a non-contracted player. By under 21, he was in the province under 21 squad again. And he was always sitting behind guys like Dewald Dievenage and Louis Schreder. But by his, I think, 24, 25, when he was 24, 25, he was the first choice Stormers scrum off, and like relatively comfortably. And he's now represented 2 Super Rugby sides. He's playing top level European club rugby at, he's, how old is he now? Let's say late 20s. So he has been able to build a career out of rugby just because he was willing to stick it through, stay in the game and keep going. So taking a long story to get to the point, I think that the big differentiating factor is hard work and channeling hard work, focusing it into, this is what I want. I want to be a top performer one day, even if it's not this year, maybe not even next year, but I know I'll get there. I just need to put my head down and grind.
But you're saying it nicely now, channeling hard work, because you can work hard, but if you don't focus that hard work, if you don't work smart as well, just to play with words a bit, it doesn't have that effect. You talked about compound interest or compound effect. It's about investing that hard work somewhere. So how do you see that?
Okay, so it's about creating focus. Yes. And creating priorities. So my big approach or model on performance is firstly to think. Whatever you think starts manifesting in how you act. And without it trying to sound spacey and putting stuff out into the universe, that's not what it's about. It's essentially getting in the right mindset. If you're going to focus on the negatives, and like now is a fantastic example. If you're going to focus on COVID-19, this, government, this, I can't find a job, etc., then you're going to stay in that space and you won't be able to create whatever you want for the next step. So firstly, it's about thinking on the right side of a situation and telling yourself, I'm not a product of circumstance. I create my own circumstances. And it's about identifying and assessing where am I now and where do I want to end up being. So that's all under your thought pattern, and building a mindset that focuses on being growth orientated, saying I can improve, I can make a situation better because I am in control of every decision I make. I always say the only thing in life, like the only thing across every sphere of life that you can control 100% is your attitude. And attitude's not, a big, bold, capital letter poster on the wall with a mountain in the background. That's not attitude. Attitude is how you react to things. That's what it is. That's your view on things. And out of that spawns sort of perspective, being able to see something for what it is. So if you can think and view and cultivate a mental state or a mindset that says, I can take control of circumstances and I can improve and I can move forward. I can move to a specific goal. This is what I want with my life. That's where I want to get to. You've also got to say, okay, where am I now? What do I have to deal with? What are the obstacles? What are the opportunities? What's my skill set? is there something that I'm going to have to learn to improve myself? Do I have to sort of pursue a change of character to get to what I want? So the next step to get to the focus and the priority section, the next step to convert what you think about and what you focus on into action, the middle step is planning, or to plan. And within that lies setting priorities and what is important. What do I focus on and what do I push aside? So we always had this view at the Institute when I started there in 2012, the program director was, or the CEO was a coach by the name of Jacques Honnekom. And I mean, he started the Institute and he was essentially the driving force behind it. And his view was, when you come to the Institute, you are here to become a professional rugby player. And that's what you need to focus on. So the Institute, funny enough, always cultivated that view that we're not going to offer guys sort of distance learning programs or try and put varsity college in here or get UNISA in here so that the guys have class at 8, gym 9, class at 10, squeeze it in like that. They said, listen, we're going to provide 100% rugby. We're going to drive it we're going to drive you into the ground with rugby. We're going to work hard and then assess whether you can take the next step as a full-term pro or whether you should go into university and play rugby part-time. And the interesting thing is that with that model, Institute players or Western Province Institute players who did a full-time rugby year and then went on to study the year afterwards had a much higher pass rate than students who went into part-time rugby and full-time studies straight away out of school. And I don't know whether it was the focus on hard work and work ethic, and whether it was the idea that, this institute's a gap year, you sort of sort yourself out as a young adult first, then you can start focusing on your studies. But essentially,
what does your gut tell you it is? What do you feel the real reason is for that?
I just think players had time to really figure out what they wanted to do and where they, where's their place in life. Because a lot of guys who came to the Institute went on to do different things the following year. I mean, some guys became helicopter pilots, other guys became professional hunters. I know a guy personally who became a ship's captain. I mean, he's sailing massive container ships across the world now, and he's hardly 30. So I think it opened up your mind to say, there's more than just doing a BCom general or going to do theology because that's the only thing I qualify for, but it gets me into Marties to play varsity cup. So it just changes perspective slightly.
Okay. Let's talk about what you're transitioning or what you're aiming for now. So what are you currently working on, or where are you focusing your hard work at the moment?
Okay, so I actually, to be able to answer that, I need to back up quite a bit. Okay. And essentially starts like my schooling years. And, I'll keep it.
You don't have to start when you were born.
I can, but it's going to get very sort of, it's going to become a psychology session here.
Okay, cool, go.
So, I mean, when I was at school, and I went to a really good boys' school where we were sort of flooded with opportunities to do different things. So I'm not one of those kids who said I come from a bad background, I had to fight for everything. And I mean, I was very privileged, and I'll be the first to admit that. But I'll also be the first to say that whatever your circumstances, everyone needs to make a decision to take control, to actually improve in life, whether you come out of good circumstances or don't. But I mean, we were flooded with good teachers and school societies and good opportunities to play sport and so on. So I was just always more sort of enamored and focused on experiences and, assessing social groups and seeing how people reacted to things around them. So I loved it when our classes became raucous, or whether we had a teacher who, instead of doing science on the day, he would do a Q&A sort of quiz with the class. So I loved it when environments allowed people to just be themselves. And I wasn't one of those students who sort of drove maths and science and saw all the big, the subjects that are going to set you free one day, like the STEM direction subjects that have so much importance nowadays. I loved history, I loved geography, and all the subjects that would cultivate general knowledge later on in life. So I liked interesting things. So because of that, I could never really, when someone asked me, what do you want to do one day, say, I want to be a lawyer, or I want to be an engineer, or I want to be a doctor, or whatever it is. I hated psychometric testing. I hated career testing, because most of the time they gave me things that I just didn't see myself doing, or it gave me that my number one choice would be lumberjack. You'd be a good lumberjack. And I said, but how do I do that? Because being in a good, very academic school, if you said, no, I want to be a lumberjack, they would laugh you off, and you'd be a laughing stock in your social circles. So I could never find a footing in something that I really wanted to do. So by the time I finished matric, I'd applied for a BCom for university the next year. I was fortunate to already be accepted to go to Stellenbosch. I liked studying. Let's put it in a different way. I was good at studying, but I would always cram just before a test or just before an exam. And I was very good at remembering facts and then go and regurgitate in a test. And a week later, I wouldn't remember anything. I was good at that. So the problem was, it never taught me work ethic. It never taught me that A plus B equals C. I was like, okay, no, I can go through life squishing in what I need to quickly do, and I'll get the result at the end of the day. And it cost me like 15 years of progress. And
why do you say that? That's quite a statement. Why do you say that?
I'm going to get to it in my story. Because I'm 36 now, and I can tell you now for the first time in my life that this is what I think is important and this is what I want to end up doing. But I still can't get the discipline to just get my head down every single day and do it because of that routine that I built up. But I'm getting there. It's something that I'm working on. I'm not perfect in any way. No one is. But it's an irony that the product that I'm getting to is called a high performance life, because I haven't mastered it at all. So anyway, when I finished school, I'd enrolled for BCom at university. But by the time we were on summer break, just before going to varsity, I was convinced that I was going to do winemaking. I was like, no, when I register on the day, I'm going to register for winemaking. Okay. And then during that holiday, a friend of mine's friend or sister or someone who was studying winemaking at the time said, no, you don't want to do winemaking. You won't get a job one day and you won't make good money. So I was like, okay, no, I'm not going to do winemaking. I'm going to stick with a BCom. So I started with BCom marketing. By the end of the first year, I changed to BCom financial management, and then BCom financial analysis, which is a lot more investments focused. By my third or fourth year, I can't remember which one because I'd failed a year, I was on BCom economic and management sciences, which is general because I'd shifted subjects around. So there wasn't a sort of focused direction, but I had done accounting and so on. But in that time, like 4 years of studying something, and it's like such a big irony that it's a degree direction where you need sort of 75% to be guaranteed a place. So you have to be in the top bracket of academics at school to get in. You walk away with like zero practical knowledge. Like you've got nothing that you can apply. So if you walk into a job, and let's say you're in marketing, and you sit in on your first big meeting and you say, yes, I know what the 4 Ps of marketing are. which I learned in my first year, they're going to laugh at you. So that just sort of exasperated my feeling of not knowing what I want to do, what I want to end up becoming. I mean, I always had this view, which I think every school kid has in their head. And I saw it with institute players coming into the institute, is they see a career as a destination. Like you become a doctor, or you become an accountant, or you become a marketer or marketing manager or a sports manager. So it's this destination thing. But it's not. A career is only, it's a tool or a pathway to help you be something else, or to realize a purpose or realize what you really want to be, which could be something completely different. You could be someone that is going to change environmentalism, but you can do it with a BCom, you can do it with engineering, you can do it with medicine, so that you've got your tool that's going to get to your purpose. But I never saw that, and we were never taught that at school, at university. So I really struggled to take this tool, which is my degree, into a realization of a purpose. So I
jump in a bit. So just to be clear, so you're saying kind of the way that many people see it and the way you saw it is like what you're studying and will end up becoming because of those studies or degree or whatever, that's your purpose. Those were linked for you. Whereas now you see it differently. There's a purpose, and you can come from any kind of degree or background or whatever and still pursue that purpose.
Yes.
Okay.
I listened to a great talk by Andri Stander the other day. I'm a big fan of his leadership talks, and he said, so many people try and become their purpose, or they try and. How did he put it? He said, whatever you do is only a means to an end. It's not the end goal. It's not the end goal to be a pastor or to be an engineer. It's not the end goal. It's a means to an end. And I think the problem with school and with academia and with university is they teach you that what you're studying now is the thing that's going to set you free, because it's going to be the paycheck. It's going to be the thing that's going to help you look after your family, etc. And there's this very small truth to that. But there's so many guys with degrees who can't get jobs, and there are so many guys who didn't finish school who are millionaires just because they knew what their purpose was and they knew how to pick up tools. In fact, not all of them knew what their purpose was, to be honest. Most of them, if not all, just sort of dug into a direction and started with small things. And it could have been measly jobs. A friend of mine who's a Stormers defense coach, Norman Laker, his dad started a construction company straight out of the military. He always tells a story. He had I think 2 rand or 5 rand or 50 cents in a wheelbarrow. And now it's one of the biggest construction companies in the Western Cape, if not South Africa, just because he was willing to work hard, and he built up from there. So I think the trick for those guys is they realize that what they are doing, or at least that the purpose isn't in what you are doing. The purpose ends up becoming the reason you are doing this thing. So whatever you're doing is a tool to get to the bigger thing. And I never had that picture. So I was always chasing a job, and which I thought, I have to get a job because that's the end goal. Once I get a job, I'll be sorted.
And did you also feel like you can get the perfect job and that'll, ignite your purpose?
Exactly. I know people talk about the perfect job, but I don't think there's such a thing, because any job gets mundane unless you have some sort of autonomy over how it changes. And that's why guys like Elon Musk, well, I know he's one in 5 billion, and not everyone has the opportunity to do what he does. There are people who are able to do it on a small scale, but he's got autonomy over where he takes his ideas to a relative extent, barring boards of directors approving him or not, but every time he sends a rocket into sky and the thing lands again, the board gives him a bit more leeway. So once you plow into a direction that you start realizing, yes, but I'm really enjoying what I'm doing here, the purpose starts showing up. And I never saw that. So I just continuously jumped from one sort of course and into the next job because I thought that's what I needed to do. And I still didn't know what I wanted to do when I graduated. In fact, I had a bursary to go and do an honors in journalism, which I couldn't end up taking because I failed my final year of BCom, which in the long run and in hindsight ended up being one of the biggest blessings in disguise in my whole life. Because when I failed that third year, in my fourth year, I only had 2 subjects, so I had a lot more time. And I started coaching rugby. I got involved in other areas. And it just started opening a little bit of a new world for me, the coaching side and managing teams, getting involved in sport. And even though we weren't playing in any massive competitions, I loved the idea of taking a sort of vision over what you want, which is winning and having fun and enjoying it, and building a plan around that. So that comes back to that 3-step model I was talking about, where the first one is think. Part of the think process is seeing a vision. The second one was planning. I love that planning thing, to say, okay, this is what we want. What do we need to focus on? And what do we need to prioritize? And so I started seeing that in the coaching. So during that time, when I finished my BCom, I continued coaching. I started working as a real estate agent and doing an honors in finance. It was a great time for me to get to know myself. That's probably the most introspection I've ever done was in that period, sort of early to mid-20s, where I realized that, you aren't your degree, you aren't your qualification. Just purely because I'd failed a year, it was a big knock for me because, there was this expectation of me to be this perfect academic, get your degree, and every time I put that expectation on myself. Mm. So when that started unraveling and I saw that, actually it's still fine. And I was very fortunate that my dad and mom, they're incredibly supportive. And obviously they were angry with me at failing that year. They said, listen, we're going to back you until you get this degree, and we're going to back you until you get your honors. So I wasn't thrown to the wolves and told, okay, you've got to get a job now to finance the rest of your degree or pay back the money or whatever it is. I said, well, we continue going. So that played a big role in me being, actually being able to finish. So anyway, I continued coaching. I finished my time as an estate agent, and I was sort of looking for the next step after my honors, and thought I loved being involved in sport. I loved the rugby coaching. And my mom, she was always the one who sort of planted seeds and planted ideas. And she said, listen, I found this postgrad sport management course at UCT. Why don't you take a look at it? And ended up enrolling. And it was one of the most practically brilliant years I've ever experienced. And I've got to give credit to course coordinator there, David Marilak, who runs the course. He asks more questions than he tells you what the theory is. And he brought in so many guests and field trips to show you what the industry is like instead of telling you out of a textbook. So I ended up finishing top of the class there just because I enjoyed it. It was fun. But the next step was to find a job in sport. And it took me 9 months to get a job. So I was jobless at that stage. And then I finally found a job in business consulting, which I really needed at that time. But the interesting thing, and this is where sort of the frustration with education settled back again, was during that period of looking for work, I rested on my qualifications again. So I said, okay, I've got a BCom, I've got finance, I've got sport. I have to get a job in finance or sport. And I sat around.
To ask you about when you went job hunting back then, and what guided it, and you've answered that question now.
That's it. That's it. So, like at school and university, they don't tell you that you've got to learn how to hustle and like be an entrepreneur and create cash flow so you can create value and create opportunities. So if you can't find a job and you are 25, don't be too full of pride to go and waiter or to do something that might be a little bit beneath a guy with an honors. I didn't have that in my head. So I continued looking for work, looking until I found something in business and finance, which I had a great boss. We had a great relationship. He loved sport. So we always got along well, but the job itself was extremely mundane and monotonous. But during that time, I was always fishing for sports jobs. And I was just speaking to Jacques Honeycomb a lot, the guys who started the Institute. And 2 years into my business or the business consulting job, he gave me a call and said, listen, you need to come and see us. We need a new admin guy for the Institute. And that's where I got involved there in 2012. So I was really in that space of, okay, now, I'm being set free. Now I'm getting this perfect job. So I'm going to be fulfilled. So even though you get that good job, it's still not always ideal for your mindset. And for the next couple of years, I loved my job because I was in a great environment, great sports facility, people who are serious about high performance. And that's why I started cultivating that real interest in how does high performance work and what is it? And it's about a team of coaches and managers and conditioners and sports scientists who all work towards a single goal, which is to get these individual athletes like high performance ready and transition them. And it's almost like you're almost designing achievement. You're ticking all these boxes. So the danger for me still was that, a career is a destination. And I was working in this high performance environment, but still after 5 years of being there, when people ask me, and my mom especially, where are you going to take this? If you're going to take it further, what are you going to do? What's the next step? And I couldn't tell them. I said, no, I'll, manage academies. And then like over the last 2 years, in fact, funny story is I dabbled in network marketing for 2 years. And it's probably one of the most personally fulfilling times in my life. And I know a lot of people laugh at the idea of network marketing because they think it's pyramid schemes and so on. And there are pyramid schemes, but there are also very legit businesses out there. But the emphasis that was placed on personal development in that industry. And I know so many guys will tell you that. Tony Robbins, Jim Rohn, all those guys say if you do network marketing for one reason, do it for the personal development. I started realizing the benefits of personal improvement as a process.
What's network marketing? Can you say something about that just to help us understand how network marketing and personal development will link?
Yes. Okay, so there's a couple of different names for network marketing. There's direct selling, multi-level marketing. Ours specifically was a social entrepreneurship. So it's any business model where the company has a product to distribute, and instead of going full retail and spending money on advertising, going on television and magazines, they put all their marketing budget into a pool and they reward product users for getting other people to use the products. So every individual who buys product, or who buys anything from the company, has the opportunity to build their own personal entrepreneurial business by also getting other people involved to use and distribute the products.
Okay.
So, and I know a lot of reasons people think it's pyramid schemes and so forth, and the guy at the top gets all the money, is they think that when you buy a product, all their money is going to pay the guy above them. But it's a very complex mathematical system used to calculate the commissions that people get paid. But essentially, I mean, you can earn more money than the guy who signed you up down the line, just by the way the system works. But anyway, so that's how network marketing works. But obviously, the industry has developed to such a stage, and there's so many scams out there, And people are so wary of this type of thing, because I learned very quickly that people are so scared of being intruded upon. So, and people are scared of intruding upon others. So, I mean, if you really understand how network marketing works and how the financial system can, and it really can set quite a lot of people free financially, just because you've got 100% control over how you build that business for yourself. If you really understand what it can do for others, you're quite keen to share how the model works with other people. But they're so scared of rejection, because they know that 9 out of 10 people are going to bat them straight away, because they think they're trying to sign them up into this funny scam or funny pyramid scheme, or whatever it might be, or invite them to a Tupperware party, where there's going to be 10 other ladies telling you how amazing this new little bucket is for storing old food in. So they become scared of sharing.
And that's where the personal development comes in.
100%. So the personal development really focused on becoming a better version of yourself and cultivating mindset. And I mean, that was always the first thing, is cultivating the idea of why am I doing this? It's flippant tough. It's really difficult. People are rejecting me. It's tough phoning 20 people in the morning to try and set up meetings to share the product or the business with them. Most of them reject you. The guys who say yes to a meeting, 9 out of 10 of those guys will reject you at that meeting. And the guy who agrees to come to a bigger meeting with you doesn't pitch up. So eventually you've got like 1 out of 50 people who end up really committing for a medium term. And 1 out of 1,000 see it through for more than a couple of years. So you really start cultivating this idea of, my purpose or the reason I'm doing this has to be really strong. And that's where the whole purpose and the tools, the business becomes a tool for getting to your purpose. It really becomes strong. And your purpose has to be really, really strong for you to say, but this is the tool that I want to use to get there. And I mean, personal development, so it's centered around cultivating your why, your purpose, your long-term vision of what you want to end up becoming. And then there's a lot of sort of mental skills, character skills that comes into play with the rest of the personal development stuff. So in one of my years, I think it was 2015, was a year our first baby was born. I read 50 books that year. And it was like my mind just went boom, like really expanded into a new space because of what I realized people are capable of doing just by changing their mindset and thinking in a new way. That shifted me completely. And obviously working in a high-performance sporting environment, you can start seeing that come into play. You could start identifying the players and the athletes who had that mindset. You could see the guys who had the big picture thinking. And even the coaches who were working with you. You could say, this guy is like top of his game. He's the best in what he does. I mean, a guy like Johan van Wyk at SAS, he's got that. And he's extremely driven because he's got that purpose mindset. And not all the coaches I worked with have that. It's got to be about them. It's not about the bigger picture. So you start seeing that. And then you start realizing the way that high performance works is you've got to prioritize what's important. And Johan also always said that. Keep the main thing the main thing. Focus on the things that's going to take you forward. Forget about the things that are going to distract you, even if they are good things, even if they are value added. You've got to put the value added things aside if it's going to detract you from moving forward effectively. And then the third step in the model, which I haven't even mentioned yet, is acting, or to act, or to get going, or to just do. I've got a permanent, or not a permanent marker, a dry wipe marker. I write on the tiles in the shower, like small things that I want to remember. So in the morning when I take my cold shower, I read those things just as reminders. And one of the things I wrote up there is doing is the best form of planning. because it at least gets you going. And as soon as you get going, you're going to start realizing what's important and not. And I mean, you can't move a ship, or you can't change a ship's direction if it's standing still. It's got to be moving forward. And your sort of, I don't want to say career, but what you want to do is the same thing. You've got to get going into something. So you asked me right at the beginning, what am I busy with and why am I doing that? Where am I taking it? So over the last couple of years, working in that performance environment and seeing the value of personal development, I saw the value in, I like to call it sort of programming performance, is saying, okay, the starting point is to have the vision. The programming phase is to say, what do we need? What do I need personally to get there? And what do I need to focus on? What do I need to leave out? And I've so often said, okay, but I want to become better at this. And to be able to do that, let's say financial investing, I need to learn to be better with my money. So I go into the Shaw Academy or Udemy or any online course or YouTube, and I enroll for 7 different courses. One in household budgeting, one in financial investments, one in trading, one in forex trading. And I end up doing none of them just because there's no focus. So I realized the value of doing one thing at a time. Gary Keller, who started Keller Williams Realty, has got a fantastic book called The One Thing, where he talks about what is the single first step that you need to focus on to get onto that pathway of achievement. So when I was sort of forming this idea of programming performance and the role of personal development in performance, I realized that a lot of athletes just have it naturally. When they work hard, it comes naturally for them to be able to take steps going forward. They're good at visualizing what they want. They're good at prioritizing. I mean, they don't go out Wednesday nights and Friday nights for drinks when everyone else is, because they know I've got to rest. I need to perform tomorrow. And they're very good at acting. They're very good at doing what they need to do. They get on the field, they work hard, they get in the game, and the results come for them at the end of the day. Even if the team loses, their individual self gets better and better and better. And that's one of the big things about vision and purpose, is once you get into the acting phase, when you really dig into the process, and you've got this concept of goals versus process, and goals falls within the thinking range, seeing what you want. In fact, it falls in the planning range. So thinking is your vision, goals come in your planning phase, and processes fall into the acting phase. And you've got this sort of tussle between goals and process, because often you don't get to your goals, even if you follow your processes to a T. Even if you don't get to those goals, you can still get to an end point that leaves you better off than you were at the start.
Would an example be not in rugby terms, not being picked for a team or a position, but still staying in the process to try and qualify or get that spot formed and change you into a certain kind of person? Okay,
100%. You're still getting stronger. You're still getting fitter. You're still getting healthier. So that framework started just sitting in the back of my head, and then the last step of that learning process for me, the first was realizing that a career is not a destination, or job is not a destination. The second one was personal development, working in network marketing, together with working in a high performance environment, programming achievement. The last one was just immersing myself in behavioral psychology books, things like Power of Habit, Grit, by Angela Duckworth, Power of Habit, Charles Duhigg. He also wrote Smarter, Better, Faster, or I think there was a title. Culture Code, Talent Code, Deep Work by Cal Newport. There's so many of these behavioral psychology books that are based on research and studies and science. And I saw that so many of those concepts were being implemented by the best athletes inadvertently, without them realizing that there was such a psychological body of work.
What are like the top 3 principles that you feel like those kind of athletes apply, knowingly or unknowingly? Is that kind of what your model is built around, or do you feel
Yes.
like the principles are something a bit different?
I think, yes.
So thinking,
they do,
planning, and acting, that kind of
knowing. Yes. So first is knowing what they want, being clear on it.
all right.
But it needs to be realistic, and that. So there's overlap between the 3 areas. You can't separate them because it's a system. So they know what they want, but they're also realistic about it. So when you're realistic about what you want, you're starting to go into the planning phase because your goals are realistic. So I've had players arriving at the Institute, and for the last couple of years, I'd have one-on-ones with them, and I would ask them, what's your outcome for the end of the year? Where do you want to see yourself in 1 year time, 5 years time, and so forth? I've had players sitting with me who, they weren't good players, talented, but they're definitely not. They're not the most the biggest prospects we've had, and they should know this by the level of rugby they played at school. They would sit there and they would tell me they want to be Springboks by the end of the year. And I'd say, flip, man, it's nice knowing that's what you want. But there's no way. There really is so little chance of you getting there. There's so few guys who manage that. And even to play SA under 20 could be a long shot. So that's the first thing, is knowing what you want, but being realistic about it as well. Because if a goal is really too big, then it struggles to drive you because it just feels so unrealistic and or unattainable rather. And so many people say this, and Werner Hubert, who I also interviewed on one of my podcasts, said that you'd be amazed at what you can do with a longer period of time, as opposed to a shorter period. I can't remember 100% what he said, but we can get so much done if we are realistic about what we can do in the short term, and then we'd be amazed to see what the effect is of those short-term achievements in the longer term.
Tony Robbins says, like, we overestimate what we can do in a month and underestimate what we can do in a year.
That's it. Okay. Sorry, I went all George W. Bush on my remembering skills and my paraphrasing skills.
I like it.
But so the next step from going, from saying this is what I want to achieve or knowing what I want to achieve is to be able to define it, clarify it, put it in writing, put it on a piece of paper, stick it on my wall. And there's studies that say if you put your goals in writing, put it on your wall, you're more likely to achieve it. I've read from other sources that study was fabricated. So whatever it is, I know that if you know what you want and you can clarify it and you can define it and prioritize, the chances are so much better of you getting there anyway, because it's always in the back of your head.
Well, if you're able to write it down, you already have more clarity than someone who doesn't write it down.
Exactly. And the biggest progress I've seen in my life is when if I've got a long to-do list. You've got your big ticket, long-term value-added items, like producing a podcast, recording shows, looking for work, writing articles for your website. If you focus on one area per day, you get so much more done, even though it feels like you're only focusing on one small thing, than saying, I've got to tick 7 boxes today, and you don't get to anything. So if you can take your bigger picture, focus on one thing at a time, and then just do and have the discipline to do, then that's going to set you apart. And my brother-in-law showed me a tweet, or reminded me of a tweet in the middle of lockdown somewhere in the States when it was still a hard lockdown across the world. It was a professor or a scientist or businessman, someone I can't remember, who said, if you exit this lockdown or end your lockdown and you haven't learnt a new skill, or started a new business, or applied something, or created something, or at least changed something within your own life that is tangible and visible, then we know that your issue is not a time issue, it's a discipline issue. Because people are always saying, I don't have time, don't have time. I've had rugby players in the institute who stopped studying part-time because they said they didn't have time. And I know they only spend 5 to 6 hours a day on rugby. So it left quite a lot of time, to invest in themselves. But anyway, that's a topic for a different day. So what I want to get to is that discipline in action is like the last most important thing. And that's almost the most important thing of the whole process. So yes, you can head in the wrong direction if you just jump straight into doing without really knowing what you're doing. But at least it's going to get your ship sailing. And once that ship is sailing, and it's almost like getting into a career or getting into a job, forget about what your passion is right at the start. Because the moment you start going and you're moving, you're going to discover small things that you enjoy about it. And that's when you can start shifting like your heading to go more in a direction where you'll start doing more and more of the stuff that you really enjoy. So anyway, so the players who are set apart are the guys who know what they want, who can prioritize, will say no to a girlfriend, will say no to mates when they go to town, will go and lie on the roller and recover and do prehab and rehab and injury report and dig in and have discipline to do the same thing every single day for a year and then 2 years and then 5 and then 10 and just keep going. Those are the guys who will be set apart. And that's what I learned that quickly. I saw that very quickly. And I thought, imagine if you can build a model, at least build a body of information where you combine this behavioral psychology research, that's scientifically proven facts for why some people are productive or efficient, and apply it to the high performance principles of practice and design and programming that happen on purpose and not on purpose or inadvertently, and put them together. You package it in a system for everyday people who want to become better at what they do, want to achieve more. Everyone has people that inspires them. Everyone's got role models. Everyone looks up to someone, whether they're a Hollywood actor or sportsman, an entrepreneur, or even the perfect family guy next door. The guy who stays true to his wife. He's great with his kids. He invests in his family time, but he owns his home outright. He owns both his cars cash. He's financially set. He's that millionaire next door. The thing is that everyone can become that. And I think the bridge between, where you are and becoming that lies in sort of a programmable framework. And I think the lessons from high performance sport that says, dig in, train, program everything you do, bring all your elements together to get to an end point with the power of how the mind works, the psychology of everything. I think that's a balance, and that's the idea, and that's what I'm busy doing in creating the high performance life. The website, the podcast is to say, how can we as people, or how can I translate the story of a Stormers rugby player into a small lesson for the everyday listener? So Ruan Nell, for example, and the thing is, this episode is for your podcast, but I'm also going to use it as sort of a startup for mine, because this tells my journey. Is I've already recorded 5 interviews, or 4. I think it's 4 or 5, and every single one has a different lesson. All 4 of the people I've interviewed I see as high performers. There's a professional rugby player, there's a professional conditioning coach and wrestler, there's a professional rock musician, and all these guys are high performers. So they've got different stories and different journeys, different things that appeal to people. In fact, I also interviewed a former survivor South Africa contestant who's a pastor. And so they'll all have different messages, but they'll all talk about an element which forms part of the high performance picture or framework.
So you can kind of see those principles in their stories already.
Yes. So Ruan Nel, which is fantastic. I love his story. He was one of those, and you don't see late bloomers a lot anymore in sport, because I think our scouting system has got it wrong. We try and identify at 17, 18 and take the guy into a performance system, and we sort of shut the rest out. But what Varsity Cup, as an example, did for guys like that is it just extended that journey for the late bloomer a little bit longer. And a guy like Ruan that went to a small school, didn't play, top level rugby at school, provincially, played a little bit at smaller unions. He's now a top a Super Rugby player. He's one of the best sevens players in the world. And his story was, I'm just going to continue working hard. I'm just going to work, be disciplined, do what I need to do, and treat every single level that I'm at as my top level. That's my story. A guy like Passon Loubser, he, for me, his story is all about staying positive in difficult times and just doing what you love, following your passion and practicing. A guy like Werner Hubert, the survivor contestant past, he's a very purpose-driven guy. And he said something that like blew me away. It's one of the best one-liners I've ever heard, is he said that goals mean nothing if they aren't served on a plate of purpose. And that's what we've been talking about a little bit now. If you don't know why you're doing something, it's going to be very difficult to plan outcomes for that. That was his big focus. I mean, he's a very strategically strong person. He knows what his vision is, and he'll change his ship to different, he'll steer different directions depending on what needs to be done now, but he'll still get to the same vision. And then Conrad de Villiers, who's a contact coach, former wrestler with the Stormers, he's got an incredibly interesting story, how he started wrestling when he was 9. And he traces that journey all the way from being a 9-year-old to where he is now. And also the value of hard work, but just sticking to something even when he really doesn't enjoy doing it. And building a lifestyle of exercise. That was his big thing, building a lifestyle out of something to get to an endpoint, and also sticking through tough times. He got dropped from a place at the Beijing Olympics like 2 or 3 months beforehand, which inadvertently ended his career. And he had to reset course to do something else. So anyway, so those are the first couple, is just to try and give an idea of where the podcast is going to go. And things change. I mean, visions and ideas around concepts change all the time. So my first 4 episodes might be a lot different to what's going to come after that, because as you record, and you probably would have seen it as well in your line of work, I know we've spoken about it, your niche sort of changes, or what you think your niche can be. So what I want to end up achieving with it is to take tidbits out of the life of high performers and put it in a little package for someone who really needs to hear it for their own life. Whether it's a house father, a dad who's always been office bound, but he got laid off, and now his wife is a businesswoman, and he's at home looking after the kids now, and he needs to find a creative way to make that purposeful for him. Or whether it's the guy who's starting a new business, or the 18-year-old who's leaving school and still wants to become a top sportsman, even though there's no sport happening this year. There's a lot you can take out of it.
No, I like the fact that it's a wide variety and a broad spectrum of people from different walks of life pursuing different things, but the principles that you can draw from all of those things are what anyone can apply to whatever they are working towards.
Thank you. You've summed it up pretty well. That's essentially what I want to get to.
Yeah.
So the first 4 interviews, the stories are incredible, and I've obviously in editing them, I've probably listened through most of them 4, 5, 6 times, and all of them like capture me, and those people's stories pull me in. But as the series goes on, the podcast, it's going to become a lot clearer, the message and what we're trying to achieve. I'm not perfect yet. I mean, I'm not rigged for video podcasting yet, as you can see in the background. I don't have the fancy green screens yet. My green screen didn't work today, so it's literally just a green wall. But there's a lot that'll still get refined and improved with time. And I've also got articles up on my website.
So where can people read and listen to these things?
So my site's just andristander.com. And the brand is called the High Performance Life. It's applying high performance principles to life. And the articles differ slightly from what the podcast is. Articles I'll write on anything that I find interesting at the time, or I feel people can find interesting on whatever I feel like writing about. I've written on. I've got a 3-part article on dealing with discipline and a high performance setup, which you can apply to sport and business. There's a story about a long distance runner who got lost in the desert. So I'll try and find any high performance story, environment, or situation, and I'll write about it and try and take lessons out of it. So it's going to be, I don't want to use the word vague. There's going to be variety. It's going to be various, and it's going to be dispersed across a lot of fields, but it'll always come back to the concept of high performance in life. And high performance is not about becoming the very best person in the world and whatever you choose to become. You're not aiming to be the best engineer on the planet or the best gardener or save the most money. It's about becoming better versions of yourself. And that is about applying improvement principles that'll get you better every single day. It's just about getting into a groove and a process where you feel I'm achieving now. And one of the best motivating factors is achievement and progress and mastery. Getting better at what you do and actually being able to see, I've achieved this now. Great. I'm excited for the next step. And that's almost what it's about.
Yeah, and that creates the momentum to keep going as well.
Momentum. That's the other word that I was looking for.
Okay, my last question, Andri, is what do you feel like is your superpower?
Jeez, my superpower. Well, my kids will say I'm very strong, and which I don't agree with always. I like trying to see a flow and a system and a process in most things. And any process or any system that's aimed at reaching an outcome or getting to an end point where you are better off than the start has a first step. And like it's that first important thing that you need to do. I like seeing the flow in that system, of what do we want and where are we? What's in between, and what's that first thing to get us going? I always take a cold shower in the mornings, first thing. It just wakes me up, refreshes me, and that's why I wrote in the shower like a couple of things that I need to remember. One thing at a time, and get going. So anyway, I like seeing
with you for the last few years. I agree that you like to plot out the process and the plan and get clarity on that.
Yeah.
So your kids think you are the strongest, and that's good. But in terms of your superpower, I agree. You have a view for that, or a knack for finding that process and that clarity, and excites me on your behalf to know that you're working on this bigger, the High Performance Life, which is a bigger project, but a bigger purpose, and to impact different people through that.
Yes. And the outflow of this, I mean, the podcast and the site, they essentially are channels, for people to tap into what I've learned, and what I feel I can bring together, and what other people have taught me. But I want to essentially move into the performance coaching space as well, which is almost like to help people implement that high performance life. That's what the performance coaching for me is about.
So when and how can people book?
Well, the site should be up. We were talking about systems and processes now, so it's step by step. So the next step is launching the podcast.
Right.
And then the step after that is for the booking site to go live. So I'm not sure when this episode is going to go live. It should be in the next couple of weeks. So by the time this goes live, should be able to book for coaching sessions within 2 to 3 weeks.
All right. Exciting.
Yeah, no. Well, we'll see. It is exciting. It's a bit,
and I hope it's a bit scary as well.
It's very scary. That's why it's also exciting.
Good. Yeah. But thanks for giving your time and sharing your story with me and with us. And I'm sure that anyone that's listened to that, there's a lot of things that people that I've worked with and talked to. Just yesterday, I talked to a student who can identify with that feeling of, what am I supposed to do with my life? And often the feeling that I can make a mistake with one choice and ruin my whole life is paralyzing to many people. So I'm excited about how you can help just plot that process. And so just start with this. And even though you're starting over here or starting over there, you can still reach your purpose. It's not about a career.
No, that's great. I mean, I'm very excited to get that going. And I mean, on that note, with the fearful student about making mistakes, if the education system can just teach you that it's fine to make mistakes, if that's the only thing they do, they'll already make so much progress. Because I mean, if you go and you write an exam, they tell you up front, if you make 51 mistakes in this exam, you'll fail. So you get scared before you even go in, that you won't make it.
Yeah, makes sense. But thank you once again, and thank you everyone for listening. Till next time.
Cool. Thanks a lot, Francois. That was fantastic. Or homie. A safe space.
Cheers.
Cheers.